Hey all, wanted to take a break from washing my socks. What? To make a video on soulmates and twin flames because there has been a lot of confusion around the two, um, and it tends to attract a certain crowd with a certain pattern, right? So as we get into this, patterns are going to play a very powerful role in how we perceive life and how we navigate it. So for me, what comes to mind is the issue or the trouble with those who tend to fixate on certain issues. Um, the spiritual, we can say, is most commonly shown through pattern. The spiritual, we could say, like the divine we can say is like natural order. Natural order, we can say, is the sequence or the most conductive, constructive patterning to the world around us. And so when we get into the subject of twin flames and soulmates and lovers and romance, we touch on an ideal in the modern world of like one and done, fixed forever, put my feet up kind of energy. And that energy tends to manifest itself archetypically through those who long for the style of connection that is, I mean, beyond unconditional into the unrealistic, fanciful, fantastical, style of love. And any relationship is a reflection. It's it's like very layered, multidimensional, multifaceted, but in essence, our relationships are a mirror to different aspects of ourselves, and I don't want I don't want that to get taken the wrong way. Like other people are other people, and they've got their own set of individuality. So I don't want this to be taken as like other people in your life being manifestations of the larger you or being brought into your awareness to exclusively show you a part of yourself that you're not seeing, even though that is a big part of it. Um, the the relationship is like a mirror to our cognitive load, that which we believe, and even stubbornly so. And this gets into the twin flame aspect. So, a twin flame we can think of as, or we can frame it um, uh, as you, or as who you perceive yourself to be, knowingly and unknowingly. So, in that sense of like we attract people to help us grow, to show us things, to reflect back to us who we're being, our current vibrational, like resting average frequency, um, and it has a lot to do with that, like the like resting average frequency and what we're being, like reflecting, getting a reflection of what we're putting out. But more than that, a twin flame kind of burns. It's that kind of burning, passionate sensation, like that um, is somewhat tangential to drug addiction. So when we talk about twin flames, we're talking about like your inner flame, your essence being reflected back to you. And so you get to see who you're being, what you're like. You see the things that you don't necessarily like about yourself, and then to kind of break it down into a couple more layers, you see not only who you are being, but if when you like graduate from or pass the test of the twin flame, not that it's exclusively that, but when you do realize this is not your person, you're kind of breaking up with who you used to be, or you're getting, at least if you don't, you stay with them, then you're getting a reflection of who you used to be or who you can be. So it's a very strange and tricky thing, because it can be a good thing, be kind of confusing, but like it's a good feeling to know that you are not this person who you're not who you used to be, right? And this person comes along to show you, or not to show you, more to reinforce where you are, who you are becoming, and really reinforcing and locking into place who you will be. Makes sense? So like the last like one of the last people that I dated was kind of like disrespectful in a way, and usually what would happen is that I would just kind of acquiesce and allow it and stay because that's the best that I thought I could do. And speaking to growth, it happened early on. Like I initiated a conversation of like, okay, what are your deal breakers? And in doing so, I had to espouse my deal breakers. And one of them was like not being ignored or given the silent treatment, and watching blatant disrespect. In my history, like I grew up with nothing but older women. She was older, so that's a tangent. But a lot of like my sister's respective days, would get taken out on me, and so there was a lack of boundaries. There was a lack of sovereignty and self. There was a lack of feeling like I could stick up for myself, or that I had my own voice. And so when like my sisters would disrespect me, I just learned that that's like, okay, par for the course, because that's the environment that I am growing up in. That's the environment that I find myself in, and I need the people around me to survive further. So we learn how to adapt to our environment. Just very quickly, one of my favorite trauma researchers put this very succinctly, and it was that if you take a person who we call maladjusted or mentally unhealthy or unwell, and they're in society, you can see that they kind of stick out. But if you put them back in their home environment, you would see that this person is kind of like a genius at surviving and adapting to their home environment. It's just that we take that adaptation and apply it to the world around us when we need to kind of begin again. Master's mindset, always beginning. Excuse me. And adapt to the new world that exists outside of our, not just outside of our immediate family or immediate social circle, but outside of our, even then, not just childhood or adolescence, but where outside of our stories, outside of what has formed us, And it kind of touches on neuroplasticity and, some other buzzwords that people are throwing around nowadays. But the biggest thing is that this twin flame connection is there to show you so many things. For me personally, I know that when I'm reminiscing about, let's say, a past love or someone who I find myself being very attached to, especially someone that I'm very attached to who I can't be with, the old programming was to like obsess, long over, dwell on that kind of thing. And it's been my responsibility, as well as a monumental effort, to choose where my mind goes. And so this is also like a task, a homework of the twin flame experience, not just of this other person, but of yourself, to see what it is that brought them to you and what it is that you need to learn from them. So what brought, let's say, the last twin flame, like very strong connection, was that I wanted to be this very like socially, to be a very specific part of myself. Right? I can be very outgoing. I can be very sociable. I can be very charming. Can be very dapper, and I can put on a show. But I mean, that putting on a show is huge, because adapting to our home environment, especially if it was a rough one, requires us to perform, to perform in the way an athlete performs, to perform in the way, a service member performs their task. So I kind of like showed myself like, I can perform, but I also need to accept and love myself. And so here's this person who is also an artist, is also on like the spiritual grind, is very hardworking. She's a beautiful person, and I care about her dearly. But it just wasn't a solid connection, and it was like it showed me that I wanted something that wasn't, or someone that wasn't the best fit for me. And it gets down to the difference between what we want in life and what we need in life. Hopefully finding the best middle ground there. But this was someone, the relationship was something, the person was someone that I really wanted, because it would have given me the permission to love a version of myself, who I found very, very beautiful, very attractive, and I was putting her on a pedestal in a lot of ways. And it was an excuse to break away from like the 7 months of continuous, arduous personal development that I had going. I had like that streak going. And here comes this person, and to no fault of her own, I started self-abandoning. I started ignoring or neglecting my intuition. So whenever my intuition would say, hey, like, we've spent enough time with this person, we should go home, rest, recover, process, do art, and create, not just like take that time to prioritize myself and my individual sovereign self, but tend to my responsibilities. And so when it didn't work out, it was crushing. I was crushed, but it also wasn't surprising, because there were, I mean, it wasn't just about creating, let's say for that example of creating polarity of, when there's separation between the person that you like between you and the person that you like, you tend to want each other more. And if there's just like this abundance of this other person, you like, it's like your favorite food, you kind of get sick of it pretty quick. And then just on another layer, more maybe superficial or somewhat community oriented, is that like when you're with a person and you give them all of your time, it maybe to you it's important to show that you are willing to give your time, but it's also important, at least on a subconscious level, on an unknown yet felt and acted upon level, that you have something that you're working on, that you have, I don't know, like a job, or you're pursuing higher education, or you're have an entrepreneur grind, that you have something, that you have your own life, and that it's rich and fulfilling. I mean, it's the kind of shitty thing about relationships in the end, is that like there's this thing that we want, that we long for, and yet we can't necessarily have it all the time, or that it's there, it's just not accessible. It's best to not have it accessible all of the time. And by that, I just mean, it kind of harkens back to like, we get sick of each other kind of quick. But it puts off the other person. It makes them worry about your mental, emotional, financial state, that you have all this time to give another person, and it kind of sends off red flags that you might be clingy or codependent, or have those wounds that a clingy or codependent person would have. So along with that would come, insecurity, anxiety, fear, that not only signals unprocessed emotional content, like the stuff from childhood and around there, but that's what you're going to bring to the relationship. So it's a person that might not be aware of all like the minutia of all these details, but it's like they're getting the signal, they're getting the message that like this is going to require a lot of work. And a big part of that, a big part of relationships and romance today, is that people are just not willing to put in the work. And a big part of that, again, harkens back to that reflection and mirror aspect or portion of relationships, is that if you're not putting the work in on yourself, the other person's going to see that. Or even if they don't see that, which a lot of relationships don't, and still trudge on, excuse me, but the relationship, I think this is the point that I was trying to make earlier, and I want to really hit hard on it, is that the relationship will be a reflection of the extent to which you have done the work on yourself, done the work of processing your emotional content, your baggage. And so if you're just like not about that stuff, not about, I think self-development is not the best way to phrase what we talk about when we talk about self-development. When we talk about self-development, we talk about like I think the true meaning behind self-development is in accepting and loving yourself, but not in a way that like you're constantly coming from a place of insufficiency or lack or low self-esteem or self-worth. And a lot of people get into the self-development, on the one hand, because we all have our stuff to work on, and on the other hand, it's because we don't feel like we're good enough. And so if we hop on the self-development bandwagon, well, then other people are going to see that we're working on ourselves, and then someone someday will come along and be like, you're good enough. I am, this job or this relationship or this money is a sign that you are finally good enough. And that's not something that can ever be outsourced. There has to be, known or unknown, some level of honest to God self-worth and self-appreciation. I think well-adjusted people have this, have this habit of celebrating small victories. And what I've noticed is that a lot of people in the self-development community kind of had this problem, especially like the newer ones, have this problem of like, I mean, we can talk about successful habits, but this is, honest to God, one of those keystone habits, or cornerstone habits. One of those habits that, like, if you set it, it has a ripple effect, and you start to develop other habits around it. But I mean, celebrating, by which I mean acknowledging, bare minimum, the things that you're getting done, doing right, from infinitely small to grandiose, your accomplishments, the things that you're doing right and getting done, acknowledging it. And so when we talk about self-development, or self-improvement, it should really come from a place beyond, I need to get better or become better so that I will be rewarded with an external thing like a relationship or a job or money or fame or recognition or whatever the fuck. And so a twin flame will reflect back to us. It's a style of relationship. It's kind of a buzzword, honestly, or a phrase, but it reflects back to us where we still need to do the work. And that you'll know because you'll be criticizing, explicitly, implicitly, or internally. You'll kind of be judging this person. And so what you're judging this person on are your own faults. And so where we want to deviate or course correct is in not focusing, not fixating, releasing, letting go on finding a version of ourselves to love and to fix, or to care for, so that we don't have to, so that we can, I don't know, like take a break from having to love and care for ourselves. Because it's honestly like something like an addiction to be like, yeah, I love myself. I'm working on myself, but it would be so awesome if someone would love me. And that's something that we inherently deserve out of life, but the more importance and value and stock that we put into it, the higher and further away it tends to get from us. So nothing is above or below you, but we tend to lower ourselves or raise ourselves around certain things. And a soulmate is a very spiritually mature thing, whether or not you've been knowingly or unknowingly putting in the work towards it, or you're just that kind of person. A soulmate match is, in terms of romance, that's a completely other person. A twin flame, we can, the way it really helps me to visualize it, or that the visualization that I received months ago was of like holding my own fire, or being on like a ring, and in the center was like a little bonfire. And so me around my ring is who I am. I get to see my fire, my essence, my soul, from my spark, from all different angles. So I get to know myself clearly. But if I try to like hold my fire, or yeah, the way that in a relationship you're kind of like uniting, connecting with this other person, if I try to unite with my own fire, it'll burn me. Or with a reflection, it's just a reflection. It's not like an actual other person that I'm treating like an actual other person, more of as a function of their role or of the reward that I get from them. And so a soulmate would be your complementary half. And that looks like someone who's your opposite a lot of the time. But it's more of like just a complementary or supplementary person. We are whole, and the dog's a ham. I think we just got mail. Oh, Lord. 1 second. Hey, stop it. Stop it. All right. To me, I think of like a religious person and a more scientifically minded, or a religious person. That is a person without religion. A person with religion has faith, has, I mean, speaking broadly, has faith, has this belief system that is very rewarding to them, and it comes with its own shadow, right? A shadow aspect, a shadow side to religion, which a lot of us are very familiar with. Some of us, to detriment, to, having religion is problematic for some of us. And for like someone who's more scientifically minded, there's the good things of like having a skeptical, inquisitive, questioning mind. And so when we question the world around us and we investigate more thoroughly into it, it's an act of appreciating our time on Earth, because we're getting to know the world around us, and in so doing, we're getting to know ourselves. Right? We are a fractal pattern of this universe. Another example is like I'm an artist, and I'm not super stoked on like business stuff or sales or that kind of thing. Just like business stuff are things that I'm not fond of, and a lot of that has to do with like my dad giving his life to sales, to work, to being very, very hardworking, and that's what like that was his passion and his source of validation, I think, and so growing up without my dad kind of installed that chip of resenting work, as if like if I worked hard, then I would be abandoning something, some part of myself in some way. And so a big part of like my soul mission in this life is to heal those wounds and understand my own relationship to my profession, my hobbies, my art side, and strengthen my weaknesses of business. On the other hand, like that's part of the work, but what is also speaking to like my soulmate would be someone who's very professional, business oriented. or as it was the other case with my last relationship, it was really fun and rewarding. There was a lot of pleasure in kind of talking up the last girl, because she was also an artist, but she wasn't super, I don't know, like sales or business oriented, and that helped me see, right, that twin flame reflection helped me see that I'm actually pretty good and have advanced and grown pretty quickly in terms of like sales and marketing and selling myself, and like speaking myself up and stuff like that, in the moment with other people. And so when she was kind of like hesitant or trepidatious about speaking up her art, I was very quick to like jump in and kind of talk her up, and be that kind of like almost like artist's manager, fill in that role. And so that helped me see that, like, okay, my perception of myself is morphing and changing, and so who I'm attracting will then also morph and change as I go. And you see a lot of these relationships where like a person's been married 3 times, married and divorced 3 times, and that's not anything bad about them. A lot of the times that's a pattern that they're just unwilling to see, in part unwilling to see, but also in part that helps them in their life's mission. So it's neither good nor bad. It's just something that we either need to work on and resolve within ourselves, that maybe that's not getting done, and the pattern repeating is kind of showing us that. But on the other hand, if it's necessary to go through that, then it's usually a clear indicator that outside of romance, there's this whole other life, like 90% of the rest of life outside of just romance, where others need us.